Welcome to Asking for a Mama, where we answer the questions you submitted to us. We got a few relationship-type questions about communication struggles, fighting in front of the kids, and more. So grab your drinks, pop in those earphones, especially if you have little ears around, and let's dive right into episode 59.
Ooh, that was good, guys.
Cheers!
Cheers! Yum.
So good.
Okay, ladies, how do you communicate with your husband if you were never taught how to growing up? But, wait, so, who actually teaches their kids, like, how to communicate with, like, Ray or Harley? Do you start teaching them? Like, this is when you're married, this is how you should communicate.
Okay, so I think what the listener who submitted this question is, well, I could be wrong, but I think what she's saying is like, what if you came from a background who your parents either were divorced, so you never really saw them communicate, or you saw them only fight, or so like
you never
maybe
saw them make up sex.
you weren't you weren't exposed to like the proper way or the way that you would like to communicate with your spouse. You've only seen it on TV or something. So maybe that's what they mean is like you didn't have a good example of it, so how do you change your mind or like
reset your mindset,
or that habit or whatever to communicate properly. That's what I'm interpreting it as. I could be wrong, but no, because you're right. I mean, I don't say, Ray, this is how you're going to talk to your husband, or sons, you're going to say how you talk to your wife, but they're gonna learn no matter what.
Example,
exactly,
because they're watching everything you do, so the way that you communicate with your husband is already setting an example because they're watching everything you do.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what they meant.
So what do you do?
I feel like communication with your husband is based on who your husband is, because everybody's like situation is different. Right. So if you have a husband who's prone or more sensitive, then you probably can't communicate with him a way that you want. You have to alter the communication depending on the individual. So with me, I feel like it's just been over time kind of learning that person's like triggers or how to speak or when to communicate. Like for me, I know like it's probably bad, but if like there's something that I want done or something like that, like I know when to ask him. Like I tell my kids all the time, they're like, did you ask Dad if we can do this or this? I'm like, hold on, it's not time. Like I know his moods and like when to communicate with him so that I can kind of get it in my favor. But that is a part of communication, and knowing when to insert questions or when to have that conversation is all based off of their mood, I think, for me.
And how long did it take you to be able to get comfortable to feel like you really knew him that way?
I honestly feel like I'm still learning. Like I feel like in a relationship and in a marriage, you're constantly learning because you're constantly evolving. Like the person that we were when we got married, we were young kids. We're definitely not where we were then, where we are now. So the communication then was way more worse than what it is now because we had to learn how to communicate with one another.
And with each kid that you have and each new job that you get or a new problem in the family that's weighing heavy on you, like all of that adds a different way of communicating and kind of reading.
Is a factor.
That's
Good answer, Roni.
That was a good one,
Okay, that was my answer.
So for me, I feel like I still struggle with, or I struggle with that too, because growing up, I didn't really have very good examples of how to communicate. Okay. My dad was, like I said, he was like the dominant one, but even so, like he would bark, but he would not communicate positive things in front of us. So that's another thing. Like, do I grow up just learning to bark and not say the positive things? Or then my mom, she was more, she was kind of passive, but then sometimes she would bark back, so then it was like, you kind of just pick up on what your parents, or you're like completely opposite and you're like, I'm not going to do that at all. But then how do you teach yourself a new habit of what you're it's obviously going to be uncomfortable either way, So I struggle with that too here and there, and I feel like I'm like really passive and quiet until I explode.
Okay,
you know,
so you hold all yours in until it gets to that point.
and or I've done that. And I'm trying to change that, you know, because I've learned that it doesn't work, you know. And then I also tried the nagging. I've heard all these different.
How long did it take you to learn that didn't work?
Years. I feel like years. We've been together for going on, this year will be 17 years that we've been together. And I feel like it's taken so long for me to, like, every 5 years I learn a different communication style. Because I'm like, this is not working, you know? Like, it's not giving me the results that I want. So I tried the whole passive and then explode thing. Doesn't work. I tried the nitpicking and nagging, like, over communicating, like, I didn't like when you did this, or I didn't like when you did that, or why are you, or I feel this way when you do this, you know? And I think I just like burned that one down to the floor because I was just constantly feeling everything. And I'm just like all overwhelmed with all these feelings. Yeah. And then I would read too much into them because I was like, well, did he do this because he doesn't care anymore?
Oh, when you start thinking about what they're...
Dude, I was just overwhelmed with all the feelings of everything that I'm like, I don't want to feel anymore, you know? And like, I don't want to overthink things all the time. So I tried that whole complaining and nagging, and I didn't like that because naturally I don't like to just complain and nag all the time. So that didn't... I feel like you have to find the right balance between being heard, communicating, and then not overdoing it where you always want to talk about something that you're feeling, you know, like that's what girlfriends are for, or you know, your mom or your dad, like somebody, like a family member that's not gonna have, like, does not have to be attracted to you.
They're not biased,
you know, because like I don't know, I feel like you can get too much where you're constantly beating a dead dog. Like you said in one of the other episodes, how much communication is too much. Yeah. Where like when is enough where you're like, okay, we can't talk about this topic anymore because there's only so much to say, you know? So what has worked for me this year this year I tried something new, and this is probably because of COVID, because now you know, and then also my husband
in COVID.
My husband had a surgery, so he was home all the time for, you know, for a certain amount of time, and then with COVID, and we were just there, and then everybody else is gone, so it's, you just focus on your relationship, and then I felt like nothing was working. I was over communicating, I was feeling everything, and I was, you know, trying to be patient until I exploded. So all of that in the beginning of COVID was really hard, and then after that I started like researching, like doing a girlfriend, I just met up with her for lunch, and she had told me like, oh, you should listen to this podcast, and it's called the Empowered Wife Podcast, and she has a book that's called The Empowered Wife, and then actually there's an audio version that's called First Kill All the Marriage Counselors, which is interesting because I was looking for a marriage counselor like during COVID. I was because
I know it got to that point,
it's
COVID.
It's not so much like our relationship that I want to get a marriage counselor for. It's more me, because of this question that our listener asked. If you were not taught a certain way of how to communicate with your spouse and you want to break that bad habit, how do you learn different? So I needed help in that, you know, because nothing was working. So I really was looking for a counselor to kind of just tell me other ways. Yeah, because what I was taught or what I had picked up wasn't working. But with COVID, everybody was booked up. You know, I couldn't get a damn counselor or therapy. What I would find, especially under my like insurance or the local whatever. So anyway, it was hard. And then when that book came out, or that I found this audiobook, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Why would you kill all the marriage counselors? So then I listened to it.
That's what I'm looking for.
And oh my God, it like opened my eyes so much, because at first, like, it talks about, you know, your husband. Does your husband not listen to you? Does your husband basically do opposite of what you say? And like he basically just drives you crazy, right? So it kind of points out every single thing that like a husband can trigger, like everything. And you're like, yes, he does. And then
you're talking to me.
Yeah, and then it kind of like flips it, and it's like, well, you need to like focus more on yourself, and you need to focus less on trying to change your husband and more on trying to change yourself and the way that you view things, and like your self-care. You start with self-care. So you're like, because a lot of people are waiting to for their husband to make them happy, right? They're waiting like, how come he doesn't woo me? How come he doesn't do this? How come he doesn't listen? How come he doesn't do all of these things? But yet there's like this book kind of switches and it's like, okay, you need to give yourself all of this like self-care to build yourself up and fill your love tank, and then whatever he gives you is kind of like extra, you know? Because and that's why a lot of single people, like once they are on their own, they're like they learn, but they have to learn to self-fulfill, you know?
Yep.
And then they become more attractive because they're doing their own thing. They're like making themselves happy. And then somebody comes around and they're like, oh, I want to date them because they're all like, you know, like lively and stuff. And then what do? You're like, okay, now I put that burden on you, or that responsibility on you. Now you're going to make me happy, you know? And then you start losing that like energy and that love tank because you're relying on somebody else to make you happy. So this book kind of teaches you how to make yourself happy and stay happy in your relation, like as a whole by yourself, and then you kind of attract that positivity and that vibe. They call it the goddess of fun and light. Okay. And it's like, be that goddess of fun and light that you were before you met your spouse and what attracted you to him or him to you. And then he'll want to make you happy because he's like, wow, you're that fun person that I was with. You're not that nagging, you know, mom figure that's like, pick up your clothes.
Then you didn't have kids.
Exactly. And that's another thing, like,
I was hanging from chandeliers.
That's another thing that it said is like, you don't want to have sex, like no one wants to have sex with their nagging mom. And yes, and it's so true because it's like, what do we, after we have kids and your husband's not picking up his clothes and he's not cleaning his dish and he's not doing that, and then you feel like their mom, right? And you're just like, and then what do? You nag at them. You're like, okay, I'm not going to clean up your dish. I'm not going to like pick up your damn clothes or whatever. And so you become that nagging mom, and then they become less and less attracted to you because you're constantly nagging at them.
Mom vibes from you.
And so then they want to do less.
And you got romantic. The mom bod now.
Mom vibe and mom bod. We're out of here.
So they want to do less like less romantic things for you. They kind of push away,
so
you know.
What it is.
And so what it tells you is like, instead of constantly nagging at them, don't do their shit for them and make them responsible for themselves. You don't need to tell them like, hey, I'm going to leave your clothes on the floor because you're a lazy piece of shit. But you can just leave it there and wait for him to pick it up. And if he says like all these clothes, like it's messy, like, oh, well, I clean up my stuff.
What if he literally never picks it up? Did they say that?
He will eventually. Okay, I've tried this science experiment at home.
Oh my gosh.
And because my husband, this whole laundry thing, you know, like we have a laundry basket in the bathroom and he will put it either on top or on the floor, and I'm like, I don't understand. And so then I was like, you know, I'm gonna try this and test this out and see how many days. It took like a week for him to finally like realize like, mama ain't picking this shit up. And I was
These are all my clothes.
Move his clothes, put my clothes in the basket, and then put his back on there, because I'm like, I want to see if this actually works. And after a week, he finally picked it all up and put it in there. And then little by little, it would get that week would turn into 3 days, 4 days, or like 4 days, 3 days, 2 days, and then now he puts his shit away, and I'm like, wow. So it actually does, and I never had to nag at him. I never had to say.
Did he say
anything.
Something?
No, he didn't say anything.
Like, yo, woman, my clothes been sitting here for a week. Put them in the basket.
She's testing me.
But then if that's the case, and he's like, my clothes have been sitting here. Yes,
you're like,
your clothes have been sitting there. My clothes are fine in the basket. My kids' clothes are in the basket.
Get your clothes in the basket.
You're not picking up your slack, you know? So anyway, I highly recommend this book. It also talks about like basically staying in your lane. Like so, for example, if your husband comes home and he's moody or whatever, and you're, you know, we never like to see them moody, don't let his mood affect your mood and stay positive. And then eventually, like, if if he wants to change his mood or whatever. Like, basically, don't carry the burden.
Yeah.
As women, I feel like we constantly carry the burden of our children and our husband, and we want everybody to be happy, and, you know, but then it affects us, too. It adds extra stress. So it says, like, stay in your lane, focus on you and obviously your children, but, like, he's an adult, and he can process these things, and, you know, just don't let it change your mood, you know? And then it gives you all these tips. The same with, like, listening to, like, I have struggled with, and like I told you guys from other previous episodes, I struggle with interrupting, you know, and then I want to help him, and I think, like, oh, I could finish your sentence,
and
it's so cute, and that's the worst for guys, and I think, like, we're connected, we're soulmates, I can finish your sentence.
But even if that, especially if that's not what he was gonna say, then that's even worse, because it's like, okay, you're trying to finish my sentence, you don't even know what I'm gonna say. Let me say it.
I know. So with that, they teach you a technique. It's called duct tape, and you basically have to visually put a duct tape over your mouth so that you can fucking listen and shut up. And so that's the thing that has changed me. No, I'm like, no, I literally visualize it in my head, like, Janelle, this is the time. Just put the duct tape.
Your ass
shut up. He's not asking your opinion. He
doesn't want you to finish his sentence.
He doesn't want you to give him solutions, possible solutions. You know, like, we're always trying. Well, I'm always trying to give him some type of way. Like, well, maybe you should talk to your boss, or maybe you should, you know, try this or whatever.
A listening ear.
Yeah, and so that has helped so much. And then also just saying, like, oh, I hear you, because you don't have to agree with everything your spouse says. But if you simply say, like, I hear you, because you're actually listening to what he's saying, that kind of gives them the validation, like, oh, she's listening, and she's not giving me solutions, you know, so.
Or he's
girl,
like,
I feel like I can talk on and on about this. Go ahead. You, Marianne, what works for you?
I wasn't one, I've said this before, I wasn't one that was taught how to communicate growing up, like, whether it's, like, how we feel, or positive, like, just complimenting our family, or even in arguments. So that was one that was something I had to learn throughout our relationship, because my husband is a talker. Like, he was taught to communicate, and then he's too also the type, like, his love language is, like, the positive affirmations or whatever, like, you need to compliment him, or you need to, you know, and I was never taught how to give compliments like that. So in our relationship, it's still something I'm learning, but, like, even when we argue, like, I'm the type that is terrible when it comes to communicating, especially if I'm in the heat of the moment. Like, so you
shut down?
Yeah, like, no, like, I'll be the type that'll, like, throw it all back on you and make you feel like shit, kind of thing. Well, and this is just between my husband and I, but, like,
even if there's truth in it, is it because you just get defensive? So you're like,
yeah,
no,
I just get defensive, and I'm like, no, like, and so I've learned to, like, either try to talk it out with him, which is really hard for me to do, or if I feel like we're just going in circles because no one wants to take the blame, or no one wants to, whatever, like, I step out of the situation. Like, I'll take the kids and we'll go to the beach, or like something where I'm just removing myself because it's not going anywhere. And that's what I've done so far. But we've only been married for like 5 years, so I'm sure we have a long way to go.
You come back to it? You come back to it when you're at a better state? Like, you just have to clear your mind first?
Yeah, and then you'll talk about it? Or
we come back and someone, most likely him, apologizes, or, like, we'll come to an agreement on, like, common ground. So we have a long ways, but it's getting better since we first started.
No, and it's all about learning your husband and your partner, and knowing what works for you guys. And I feel like with me, I still, like, kind of can't gather this. Like, it's weird, but I feel like it works itself out. Like, me and my husband can go at it, and I'm pissed. I'm gonna stay pissed, and, like, literally 5 minutes later, he's like, oh, what movie do you want to watch? And I'm like,
he's over it.
Bitch, please. Like, I'm about to make a movie up in here because I'm about to knock you out. Like, I don't want to watch a movie with you. Like, I don't even want to look at you. But, like, that has helped me kind of, like, life is too short and kind of get over it. Like we said what we had to say. We came to a solution. Now let's move on. Like why are we holding grudges about it? Like there's no sense in going to sleep mad. And now that makes me understand what that statement is about, because I literally thought like going to sleep mad meant you're like literally going to sleep mad and turn one way. But honestly, it's just about finding a solution after that argument and not walking around the house and you're not saying nothing. The kids see the tension, whether you want to face it or not. They know if you guys are not laughing and being regular mom and dad, they're not stupid, you know? So it's just all about finding the solution and what works for you and your partner.
But sometimes, like, if there's no solution, it's kind of,
I
feel like there's like a agree to disagree temporarily until we can cool the fuck off and then come with clear heads.
Absolutely, because that depends on the situation. Like a situation like if your husband disrespected you or something like, you know, something like that, that is not just going to be a 5-minute, okay, we figured it out. You know, it just depends on what the argument is about or what the situation is.
So have you ever argued about something and felt so strongly about it and you guys were bumping heads because you were not on the same page, and then finally like things cool down and then they come back and say like, you know what, you're right, like I agree with you, like, okay, well, let's do this. But then at that time you're like, so much drama went into it that you're like, fuck, I don't even want to do this anymore. Have you ever changed your mind and felt that way too? Because like there's been times where that has happened and I'm like, I just feel so defeated. Like we just fought over something that I didn't even expect a big fight over, and now I don't even want to do this. You know, like
you're drained over it. It sucked the life out of you, literally.
So that is common. You guys have felt that way.
I'm sure a lot of people.
But then I start questioning it. Like, are you just agreeing with me just so that we'll be back to normal?
But you know what that book had mentioned is like, instead of coming back, so like say they say something to you, right, and they're complaining to you about something that you're doing, and instead of getting defensive, obviously mentally try to have self-control and find truth in what they're saying. But if there's no truth and they're just fucked up and they're attacking you, you know, that to say ouch, right? You say ouch and like walk away and nothing more. And so that like honestly this book takes like a lot of like self-control.
I'm gonna do that all day.
Ow. It's interesting because they say that like when you say something like that, all that like that immediately tells them that they've offended you without you having to break it down, because they're smart enough to know like I probably shouldn't have. And then they process that and it kind of makes it doesn't lead it into a fight, you know. It's like it ends it. And then so I finally tried it because one time he said something and it was more like I got butthurt about something and I was like ouch, you know. And then he was like, don't act like that hurts your feelings. Like, we talk like this to each other. And then I'm like, that one kind of stung, you know? And then that was that. And then he's like, I'm sorry. So it's because it, like you said, it just depends on the guy that you're with and, like, your personalities together. And a lot of the times we have kind of, over the years, made probably mistakes by digging into each other and clowning and, like, going to, you know, and, like, throwing jabs at each other. And so now when it hurts my feelings and I don't get butthurt, instead I just say ouch.
You're
and then
too sensitive, girl.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he's like, are you on your period?
I know what happened.
So that's a new way of communicating and I guess getting your point across without it leading to a fight. Like, oh, I feel that you hurt my feelings.
You just say ouch and let them know.
Yeah, it's like dude, you went too low on that one.
I'm doing that later. I'll just be like.
And then before we end, this question is
in the show
is a good way of communicating is to say what you want and do what you want, right? So like staying on your same page, and also like I feel like I struggle with saying what I want because I'm like, I want him to know what I want already. You know what I mean? Like, do you guys ever? And they can't read your mind. And so like, if you verbally say like, I would love to not do the dishes tonight and sit down on the couch, you're giving them that option to be like, okay, like, hey, okay, you don't want to do the dishes, I'll do the dishes. Yeah. You know, or I want to go to the store today, or I want to do all of these things, and if it doesn't line up with what they want to do, at least they know like what you want to do. So I'm learning to do that because I'm not used to like doing, I guess, what the fuck I want to do first, you know. So it's interesting, but it actually fills up your little self-love tank. Yeah, your little happy bucket, because you're like, I'm actually doing what I want to do, you know? So that helps. Okay, so with all of that said, do you guys argue in front of the kids?
Argue, disagreements. Two different things. I don't think we have like full on arguments in front of the kids. I can't remember a time that we've had like an argument where the kids get like scared what's going on type of stuff. Disagreements, yes, we've definitely voiced our different opinions with one another in front of our kids, which I think is healthy because they need to see that we're human and we don't like agree on everything, and it's not like, you know, everything's not perfect. So we have disagreements in front of our kids, but we also solve the problem in front of our kids also. So we let them see like, yeah, we had a disagreement, but we also figured it out together, and then we move on. So that's one thing that we do try to do, is find a solution in front of them so that they can see that we figured it out.
So, like, for your arguments, do they often get loud, or are they more, because you had said, like, the kids will know when we're mad because we just kind of give each other space and, like, get, like, kind of quiet with each other?
We don't, no, they don't get, like, screaming matches. No, it's kind of, and I feel like because that goes with our personality, we don't really, like, scream and stuff at each other. We'll just, I mean, you'll know that we're having a disagreement, but it's nothing that, like, you know, a kid is like, oh my God, what's going on? Type of stuff. And we've had those arguments, but I feel like those are the arguments that we probably take aside, or like, or we're like, I need to talk to you, and we go in the room and close the door, and maybe they can hear outside of the door, but
at least you're taking the extra step.
So we're taking the extra step to like have a disagreement not in front of them.
So you're pretty good at like catching it and like moving yourself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Even if he is not, I feel like I'm better about like, I don't want to talk about this in front of the kids type of deal, versus him. But we'll go to like together, like or we'll just like revisit it. Like I'm like, I don't want to do this right now, so we won't say anything, and then we'll go back to it later.
My husband will say, like, I don't want to talk, like, we shouldn't talk about this in front of the kids, but I'm like, we're just talking.
You start going at it?
He's better at that, like, trying to pause it.
Okay,
and I'm like, we're just having a conversation.
Right now.
I know. And it bothers me because then I feel like, what, we're about to make this into an argument? Because,
but are you raising your voice at that point?
So clearly, the way that you can see me right now, if you're watching YouTube, I talk a lot with my hands. Like,
and if you know, people who talk a lot with their hands can set people off.
Yes, apparently it does. And so, like, my husband feels like when I talk a lot with my hands that I'm getting attitude and I'm getting crazy.
It shows
like,
attitude.
But I'm just expressive.
If someone is coming to you and they're like, well, let me tell you, okay? Like, this already is problematic.
But even when I'm happy, I talk with my hands. I'm just a hand talker. And so, even when I'm trying to be calm, I'm trying to be calm, and I'm like this, okay, so this and this. Like, I'm still trying, and he's still like, no, you're coming at me very strong, you know? And I'm like, I don't know how to not come at you strong. Like, so then what? We just can't fucking talk, and then it like gets into
So you argue in front of the kids.
So you do. So to answer this question.
But wait, Marianne first. But I was just saying, like, my husband's more like you, where he can catch it, and I can't catch it.
Okay. Out of there.
Yeah.
Okay. She said, try to move out of there. That's what Marianne said. Try to move out of there.
For me, it's important not to fight in front of the kids because I don't remember a lot before the age of 5. And I remember like an argument my mom and dad had, and I was before, like I was like 3 or 4.
Oh, that must have been a good one.
Like, I can still remember it to the day. And I'm like, oh my God. But if you ask me about, like, something happy before the age of 5, it's hard to recall. So I'm like, okay, it's definitely something that they'll remember, even if they don't want to. But I wouldn't say it's, like, damaging. Like, it didn't damage me, but it's something that will turn you into the person you grew up to be. So for me, like, I try not to. And we
probably argued once in front of the kids, like yelling, but it got to the point where I just like left. I grabbed them and left. Like we just got in the car and went somewhere, but it was to the point where they were just literally in front of us and we're yelling at each other, and I'm like, look at the kids, they are watching you, they're watching you talk to me like this. So that happened once, and it hasn't ever since then. But yeah, I can remember it. But
so do you feel like he gets loud or you get loud,
or both?
I'll get loud first, but that's because I'm starting to get defensive, and then he'll start we'll start going back and forth. But that was that one time. Now normally we just kind of like, we'll both stay quiet, or we'll wait until the kids are not there, or like I'll just stay quiet and bottle it up until we're in a room by ourselves, and I'm like,
even then the kids probably like know, like, why aren't you guys like acting how you normally act?
And I'll admit it's usually me that's like more quiet and you can see there's tension there, and he tries to like, he's the communicator, so he tries to like calm things down between us, but like I'll hold that grudge for a little bit. So
and kids are so freaking smart, because even if my husband like will fall asleep on the couch, like it could be by accident, or I could have put his ass on the couch. It just depends, and the kids will be like, why was Dad sleeping on the couch? Like, what's going on? I'm like, he fell asleep on the couch. But if it's something that he pissed me off, I'm like, oh, he made me mad. I will tell them. I'm like,
but is that your older kid only asking, or is
it's my
too?
older kid. Peyton probably has asked actually before, but it's usually the older kid which is so funny, because I think that they pay a little attention more because they're so invested and, they feel strongly about obviously not wanting their parents to get divorced. So I know my older child would always ask me like, oh, how are you and Dad doing? Are you guys good? Like he literally quizzed me, and
Isn't
literally
that crazy?
like he will even ask like, when's the last time you and Dad been on a date? Like he'll ask stuff like that, which is like, what? I never knew kids worried about stuff like that. But
we never did, and I feel like kids now worry about divorce, and I'm like, I never
even
even
thought
thought
the rates
about
are
that.
so high.
Because
I never worried about that.
Okay, with what you said, Marianne, about like that being embedded in your mind, maybe the reason why I feel like I always have to have an answer or something is because I would see my dad bark at my mom, and sometimes when she would be more passive, it would drive me nuts, because I'm like, don't let him talk to you like that, And so even though my husband's completely different from my dad, like he's never gone there, I still feel like that little girl inside, like, nope, I gotta stand my ground. Nope, so with that, but then at the same time, like I remember like back in the day when I was a young teenager, my older brother had a girlfriend, and I remember them fighting. They would fight in front of my mom. Like literally, they didn't care who was around. My grandma could be around, and they would bicker and fight. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, you guys should be fucking embarrassed. Like, aren't you embarrassed to be fighting in front of my mom? And so that would drive me crazy. So at that age, I remember swearing like, I am never our arguments are going to be kept private. I'm not going to roll it over to, like, people are not going to know. And they may know that we're not talking because we're quiet with each other. When we arrived to a party and you had just been arguing in the car and you're like, you go separate. Yeah, but I will not, like, argue and bring it into that situation. Like, open it up to other people, So I do have self-control when it comes to that, but we have definitely like argued in front of the kids, and I think it's one of those things where it's like a disagreement conversation, and then you think it's going to be calm, and then eventually like it gets heated, and then because it's hard for me to when I'm really mad and I feel like he's not really getting it or understanding, it's hard for me to articulate it differently. So then I get more frustrated with myself, and I'm like, fucking just say it, like stop trying to tiptoe around it, and then I'll start crying because I'm so mad, and then the kids will see it that I'm more mad that I'm crying in front of the kids, because I'm like, no, this is just all confused, like it's not, I'm not crying because your dad's hurting my feelings, I'm just mad at myself. And so we've definitely had that in front of the kids, but we don't really get super loud. We've never, like I've heard, like I said, my brother and his girlfriend, they used to get bad, like where it like names were, you know, like names were thrown and like bitch and asshole and whatever.
Oh my God.
And so when we were young, we would talk about things like that, me and my husband, and I'm like, listen, you can't call me, I'm not, you know, like we can't cross these lines of disrespect. So we've never gotten so loud or so disrespectful. Like we've never called each other like out of our names, and we might say like you're acting like a jerk or whatever, but like nothing, like I've never called him a dick or anything. Yeah. And so I mean, but obviously everyone's different, and I just feel like it's just because the way that I was raised, and I saw certain things that were normal, and then I was like, I don't want to make that, you know, normal. But we're both very prideful and we're both very stubborn, so I think that that's what starts our arguments, is like we both want to be right, you know, so we'll be just having a conversation, and then it'll just turn into something that's like a disagreement, and then it just fuzzles over, and then that turns into an argument. But both of us will kind of more shut down. Like he'll shut down first because he has more self-control, and he'll just be like, okay, fine, we're just not going to fight about it. And then I'm like, I'm not fighting.
I'm not done talking about this.
I don't want to fight. And then maybe I'm the over communicator where I'm like, I don't want to fight. I want us to talk this. Like, obviously, if you don't agree, just tell me you don't agree, and then tell me your points. But so it's a mess. It's still like it's a work in progress, guys. We're not perfect.
That's
but
so funny.
But yeah, so we don't do the whole name calling and stuff, but yeah, I need to work on my like self-control. And it's funny because it's not with everybody, it's just with him, and I don't know if that's because we're the closest because we're freaking living together, but we do
different relationships.
I need to work on
him from what you have with everybody else.
Yeah, I need to work on not doing it in front of the kids, even like but it's hard because like I said, they start off as just regular little conversations, you know, and then it just turns into like a disagreement, and then it's like annoyed that you're disagreeing, you know, and then they're like, okay, well now they're fighting.
But
you
they
know?
have to see it. You can't have your kids be in a situation where they don't see like real life situations and they don't know how to handle it. Like that's not normal for us to like. And no, I'm not dissing anybody if you don't let your kids see you, you know, argue. Yeah. But I feel like in a sense it teaches them real life. Like we can't hide everything and make them think that life is perfect and everything's going to go your way. It's not. Like I feel like that's helping them problem solve and see what real life is all about. With that said, do you think it damages them? From them seeing you argue?
Do you think we think that because we like when you grew up? Did you ever see your parents like have disagreements and stuff?
Very much so.
And how did you feel? Like, do you feel like it damaged you?
In a sense, I feel like sometimes when they would argue, a lot of times I would think that, and I feel like this is just kids in general with divorce and stuff. You think like it was something that you did, kind of. So I would like wonder like, you know, how many of those arguments are like something that I did or pertaining to something that I didn't do or something like that. So, which sometimes they didn't have anything to do with me, but just as a kid, you don't know. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like in a sense, it definitely made me look at things differently and put in perspective like how I wanted to be with my husband or what I thought a situation should be handled like, you know, but I'm happy that they, you know, I was able to see that and they didn't hide it because that let me know like, oh, like if I seen something, I was like, well, they shouldn't have did that in front of me. I'm not going to do that in front of my kids type of deal. And I think if I didn't see that, then I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't know. But yeah, I think it does damage them a little bit, but it also helps them with life situations.
So because it teaches them, right?
Teaches
like
them,
how to communicate or like what not to do or what to do.
I don't think it like
kind of
damages them to the point where like they're gonna be canceling.
Yeah, no, and it depends.
It depends on how heated it gets, though.
Because I'm sure there's people in relationships like you hear about it all the time where like kids see their parents physically fighting.
Oh,
like let's talk about like there's really kids out there who see that, and I'm sure that is absolutely damaging. You know, so I think it just depends on the situation. But I'm sure that there's some arguments that are damaging damaging to children.
Yeah, it's damaging
I think
to hear your parent call each other a different
bad
name.
names. Yeah, that's
It's damaging to see them storm out. I remember there were times where like my dad would leave, like just leave in his car, and we were like, "Is he gonna come back?"
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is damaging. I think
Damaging
like
for a child.
yeah. And then if you include alcohol in it, because I know I said like, oh, you know, me and my husband, we don't name call, but you guys also have to take into consideration my husband doesn't drink alcohol either, and so I know that alcohol
Plays a
factor in other people's arguments too.
That's
you know,
true.
because I know like when you drink alcohol, it gets you more like pumped up and
riled up.
riled up, feisty, and then I'm sure you have more arguments or like curse words there and stuff. But he doesn't drink, so that's maybe why we've never crossed that line of like that kind of level of arguing, you know. So I just wanted to throw that disclaimer in there.
That's true.
I remember hearing a friend say that like something that they kind of go by or what they feel and what they kind of use for them is like they say that they don't like to do those arguments where it feels like they're last. And I guess that means like those arguments where it gets really bad and then you're thinking in your head like, okay, this is it. I can't do this anymore. Like she always says that she tries not to get her arguments to feel like it's the last one. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I like have to process that, and I'm like, that's true. Sometimes you have those arguments where you're thinking like, damn, we're just not seeing eye to eye. Like,
and it's probably over something stupid.
Yeah, usually 9 times out of 10 it is, but
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, like that's something to like think about and help you put things in perspective, that obviously you're working on your marriage and everything. It's not going to be your last. You're going to have disagreements. You're going to figure it out and continue on. So I like that little, how she said.
But to be honest, I feel like we have had those kind of last
Oh, I
kind
feel
of
like
arguments.
everybody. I feel like everybody
I don't
has
want
those
the
arguments.
listeners to think that everything's all damaging.
No, I feel like everyone has them.
Throughout our
Especially even
relationship.
younger.
Oh God, yes. I feel like it was way worse in the beginning.
Millions of arguments.
But yeah, there's definitely been arguments where you feel like,
This
no,
is it.
I'm washing my hands.
This is
There's
it.
nothing that I
I'm
can
filing
say
for divorce
to get
tomorrow.
through your
I'm out of
head,
here. I
you
am
know?
out of here.
And I feel like when that happens, you definitely need that time to be in a separate room or something to like really think about what the hell you want, you know? So I feel like yeah, it could damage the kids. It can damage the kids different levels of it, you know? But I also think that, like you said, it's really good to teach them, like if you can have enough self-control to like actually just keep it as a conversation level.
Exactly.
And also to find solutions or
Hash
to
it out in
agree
front of
to
them.
disagree. You know, if you can show them that you're not always going to agree and it's okay to have disagreements and it's okay to keep it as at a controlled level and it's
Show
okay
the
to agree to
compromise.
disagree kind of thing.
And
yeah.
show the compromise.
Yeah,
That's
then that's
about.
also healthy because I know my husband, he knows a family who I guess the parents never argued in front of them. And I was like, and he wants that. He doesn't want
how are
us.
the kids? Like, how does the family turn out?
They seem fine, but or they're like, you know, the
Pick
kids
up
seem
that
fine.
rug.
But now I
Pick
wonder,
up that rug.
now I wonder, like, is that healthy? I mean, maybe to me, I feel like it's not healthy because that's not what I do and that's not how I was raised. But maybe, I mean, is that healthy because are you teaching them how to communicate? You're teaching them how to have self-control.
Yeah.
To go to the other room and to lower your voices. That's good. But at the same time, are you teaching them like an unrealistic idea of perfection? You know, like, oh, my parents were perfect, they never.
When there's a big disagreement between people who have to be with each other forever, you know what I mean?
So how about that? I'm sure, like, if there's listeners out there who like don't argue in front of their kids, I'm interested to hear, like, write us and let us know, like, how do you do it? How's that working out? Like, I'm really interested to see, like, what the outcome of that and how they manage to do that, because that seems very hard.
Yeah.
I commend you, and that seems very hard, but I'm interested to see how how that works out and how you do it. What's the secret?
And how you're doing it internally. Are you somebody who is passive, or are you somebody who can communicate that with your husband? Like, you get it out? Because it's one thing to like just keep it in and being passive and like, okay, and then you explode and then you just get a divorce out of nowhere. Or is your communication good between you and your husband, and you guys
go back to it later,
separate it from your kids? You know. Oh my God, I feel like I'm constantly like burping. I talk too much. You see, that's what happens when I talk too much. I feel like I get a lump in my throat and I'm like, oh,
that's how I was in the beginning. I was
speaking on arguments with your significant other, what do you ladies think about angry sex or makeup sex?
Yeehaw!
That's when you role play because you don't want to be yourself.
What's angry sex though? Is angry sex like
okay? So
missionary?
Well, here's the thing. There's people who like
spank me.
There's people who like to fight so that they can have that hot angry sex.
But is that angry sex and makeup sex is two different things?
I think that they're different because makeup sex is like you've already apologized, you've already came to some type of resolution.
You love him all over again.
Is it that you love him, or you're still kind of frustrated, but you have sex with him?
That sounds like angry.
I think you're getting the tension out.
That sounds like angry sex. It's like when you're laying missionary and you really don't feel like in your role.
Alright, so tell us more, Romy. So hold on. So will you have sex when you're mad and in the middle of a fight? Have you?
No. I don't think I've ever, because I don't even want to look at you. Like you said, like the sight of you is repulsive. I'm mad at you.
Okay, so but what about like makeup sex? Like
makeup sex is, I feel like when you had that big argument, but you guys figured out a solution and you compromise, and now you're all like, ooh,
but it's not angry.
I love him.
It's a celebration.
It's
so it's like, oh, I almost lost you, and now we're back together.
And now I love you all over, boys.
So that's what makeup sex is.
But angry sex, I can't. I don't even think I can do angry sex, because if I'm angry, I'm turned off all the way. That's no juices is flowing.
Yeah, I don't want to look at you if I'm pissed.
So what
you done angry?
No. I'm gonna answer, but I always want to like fish for you guys.
I just feel like after like the makeup sex, there's like a sense of peace. Like all the tension
peace offering. Peace offering.
But I feel like it's funny because I feel like when we're just it's gonna sound boring. Like when we're doing like normal sex, it's not as like, you know, exciting.
Regular sex.
But when we're having makeup sex, it's like more exciting. Like we're doing all the different positions.
I feel like it's almost like you're trying
to be on top more.
It's almost like you're trying to prove yourself. Like you want to argue with me.
This is what you almost missed out on.
You almost lost all of this.
Okay, I thought I was weird because I know people who enjoy angry sex. I've seen shows like that where they're like reality TVs and stuff where they like argue and then they're still arguing and they're still mad, but they're like, oh, I just want you, and then they like have sex, and it's like there's nothing sexy to me about my husband arguing with me. Yeah, like I want to grab his eyes. I don't want to have sex with you. I don't want to open my legs.
Down his eyes.
Like I don't pretend to be mad. When I'm mad, I'm mad.
You know I'm mad.
I feel like I try to keep the peace, but when we are mad, we are fucking mad. And I don't think he wants to touch me either. Like I feel like
he's scared.
We're like we both don't want to touch each other.
So that's what angry sex is?
I thought that's what angry sex is like that's when you're just like and then you're like aggressively pulling hair and like
why did you talk to me like
gagging
that?
And like
rip off your
like I'm picturing the 50 Shades of Grey kind of sex, you know? I don't know. That's what I thought angry sex was. But yeah, so I don't want to be touched. And
makeup sex.
Okay, so makeup sex. Oh yeah, I think like you said, that's like one of the best kind of sex because it feels like your relationship almost ended, and then all of a sudden you're saving it, and then you're like, I almost lost you for a second, Johnny.
I feel like makeup sex. I think makeup sex and vacation, no kids sex is probably the top two.
But what if you are still a little bitter? You know, like when you make up,
No,
and
that's not
you're just laying
you
down
make
like a
up,
log.
but and you're like, okay, we're over it, but I'm still side eyeing you a little
But
bit
that's
because
not-
I don't.
You gotta work for my love.
It's like an agree to disagree kind
But
of.
then
thing.
is that really makeup sex then? Because makeup sex is you guys are
To
both,
him,
you
that's
guys
probably.
both realize that that fight was stupid, you're crazy, you're not going nowhere, busted wide open. That's makeup.
Okay, but like when Marianne said, like she doesn't like to apologize a lot, right? So he is sometimes. So I was like that for the first 10 years of our relationship. So and it's funny
And how
because
long
sometimes when I apologize, he's like, "Are you apologizing? Like are pigs flying? Is the world ending? You know?"
Oh my God,
so
Janelle.
I went a
It's
long
like the
time
fat
with
lady
being
singing.
so prideful, and so then he got used to apologizing just to get
Get it over
to
with.
get it over with.
Oh.
Even and so there's been times where he'll apologize even if he didn't mean it. He just doesn't want to fight, you know.
So do
and
you
so
strive off of apologies? Like, and he knows that. He knows that if I don't say I'm sorry to this girl, she's gonna walk around slamming dishes, doing all this all day. So I'm gonna go ahead and
end it now.
and say I'm sorry because I know this is how my wife works.
I don't know, maybe.
We need to have the guys on a podcast.
Maybe I'm sure that's how he
'Cause
felt
he's
in the
learned
like I
you by
said
now.
in the first 10 years. I'm sure he knew I was gonna be mad no matter what if he didn't see things my way. Oh my God, I sound like an awful person. I was, and now it's gotten better.
Mimosa is therapy, girl.
That is therapy. I swear I have gotten better. You can ask him. I apologize, and now I feel like I apologize more. And I understand where he is coming from, where he apologizes even if he's not sorry. He's like, okay, I just don't want to fight about it.
And that
so
works for you.
sometimes that's what I do is like, okay, I get that we're not going to see eye to eye. I still believe in what I believe in, but I
fact that you
apologize
were big
for, making you feel this way or it coming out wrong or, too heavy. And then,
But I'm still right.
but in my head, I'm right, but we're not going to get anywhere. So
And
Sorry.
then is that
I won't tell him he's right. I'll just be like, I'm sorry if it came out wrong, or
Yeah.
my
That
delivery.
you don't understand me.
I'll apologize for my delivery.
And then is that when you take out the crotchless rumper?
No, those are for celebrations. I'm more of
Okay.
a celebration kind of person.
Makeup
not
sex is
so
a
much.
celebration.
Not well. I guess we don't. I feel
It's
like
a celebration.
just for
Clap, clap,
Valentine's
bravo.
Day.
I feel like maybe makeup sex is like every 6 months because that's when I would say, or like once
Makeup
a
sex
year.
is not routine every 6
No,
months.
I'm saying it got to the point where like every 6 months was like a big blow up of a argument. But between that we would be chill, and then we would argue like
So what
every
is
6
it
months
about
or
the
once a
6
year.
month zone
I don't
for
know.
you
Maybe
guys?
I don't know. I don't know. That's why I need counseling, guys. That's why I need marriage counseling. And it's not him. I swear to
Text
you.
them. Just
It's
put a reminder
me.
every 6 months on your phone to beware.
He really
6
should.
months, be ready.
I have even talked to my mother-in-law about this. Like, it's me. It's how I was raised. It's shit that I've seen, and I get like one of those fight or flight kind of things where I just want to run away. And I've always thought I was like this gypsy soul, and I never wanted to get married. Remember, guys, I never wanted to get married. So all of this stuff is like, I don't know if I'm like fighting my natural instinct to flee, but like,
No, it's all about, like, I read something and it was talking about how the life we live and how we navigate through life is all based on our childhood traumas. That's where it all starts. It's anything from your childhood trauma that's a trigger or anything, you take that with you throughout life, and that's how you navigate and make decisions are based back on your childhood trauma. And I truly believe I truly believe that. Because everything goes back to our childhood.
And that's why I strongly believe in like all these self-help books and like these therapeutic things, because you gotta, if you're not gonna stop the cycle for your damn self, you gotta stop it for your kids. If you have fucking kids, you have like, do you want them to have the same relationship that you have or that your parents had or whatever? Like,
break the cycle.
I feel like we're breaking the cycle, but I need to work on that shit even more, because I don't want them to have, because our relationship's not perfect, and I know their relationship won't be perfect either, but like I'm trying my hardest not to screw them up. I don't want to be the reason to screw them up, you know?
And just set a good example of a happy, loving family. And yes, you're going to go through problems, but that at the end of the day, family is everything, and everything that you get in life, you have to work hard for and fight for. And that's with everything in life.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us. If you want to catch up on our previous episodes, visit mamasmimosas.com, where you'll get access to all of our podcast show notes, our YouTube videos, and our private Facebook group, where we chat with you about each episode topic and host live Q&As with our fave mom tribe. Can't wait to see you there.